Well, I'm not thrilled. I'm not thrilled about it. I don't have to do that. I'm not thrilled about the whole situation. It's not a good situation. But I will say this: we want the hostages back, but we are not thrilled about the way that went down today.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening and good night. Welcome to a very special edition of the Erin Molan Show. We're going to focus entirely on Israel's operation on Qatari soil, the attempted assassination of Hamas leadership there. There's so much in this. This is such a significant move, such a significant escalation. I'm going to talk to Jonathan Conricus, who is a former IDF spokesperson, and also Daniel Rubenstein, who has worked with former Prime Minister of Israel, Naftali Bennett, and also in other departments there. So they know how these operations are run. They understand how the Israeli government works, particularly when it comes to national security and operations of this kind. Now, when I say that, operations of this kind, this is very different. They have gone to the heart of where this terror lies, which is in Qatar.
Today, 4 of our soldiers were killed by Hamas terrorists in Gaza, and 6 Israeli civilians were brutally murdered in a bus stop in Jerusalem. This morning, Hamas proudly took credit for both of these actions. At noon today, I convened the heads of Israel's security organizations and authorized a surgical precision strike on the terrorist chiefs of Hamas. These are the same terrorist chiefs who planned, launched, and celebrated the horrific massacres of October 7th. The savage murder of 1,200 people, the beheading of men, the rape and murder of women, the burning of babies, the taking of over 250 hostages, innocent hostages, grandmothers, grandchildren, Holocaust survivors. They perpetrated the worst attack on the Jewish people since the Holocaust. Now, they were meeting in the same place, exactly the same place, where they celebrated this savagery almost 2 years ago. At the beginning of the war, I promised that Israel would reach those who perpetrated this horror. And today, Israel and I have kept that promise. Now, much of the world, including much of the democratic world, or governments at least, have shamefully forgotten October 7th. But I don't forget, and Israel will never forget. Never. There was a time when Jews could be murdered with impunity, but since the founding of the State of Israel, those days are over. On this day, as in previous days, Israel acted wholly independently, and we take full responsibility for this action. And this action can open the door to an end of the war in Gaza. Israel has accepted the proposal put forward by President Trump to end the war, beginning with the immediate release of all our hostages, which have been held in the dungeons of Gaza for 700 days. If President Trump's proposal is accepted, the war can end immediately. We can begin once again to pursue the expansion of peace in our region for the benefit of all. But I want to close by directing my words to the people of Gaza. Don't be derailed by these murderous terrorists, by these killers. They don't care a hoot about you. They live in sumptuous villas. You can't imagine how sumptuous. Away from this battle scene. Their partners in Gaza don't worry about you. They go to the underground tunnels and they keep you above ground so you serve as human shields for them. Don't be derailed by these killers. Stand up for your rights and for your future. Make peace with us. Accept President Trump's proposal. Don't worry. You can do it, and we can promise you a different future. But you've got to take these people out of the way. If you do, there is no limit to our common future. Thank you.
Now, I'll make this very clear initially. President Donald Trump, the US president, has come out and really condemned this attack, which we kind of assumed that he would. He says the objective of it he gets, but it was not a good thing to have done it on Qatari soil.
Notified by the United States military that as Israel was attacking Hamas, which very unfortunately was located in a section of Doha, the capital of Qatar. Unilaterally bombing inside Qatar, a sovereign nation and close ally of the United States that is working very hard and bravely taking risks with us to broker peace, does not advance Israel or America's goals. However, eliminating Hamas, who have profited off the misery of those living in Gaza, is a worthy goal. President Trump immediately directed Special Envoy Witkoff to inform the Qataris of the impending attack, which he did. The president views Qatar as a strong ally and friend of the United States and feels very badly about the location of this attack. President Trump wants all of the hostages in Gaza and the bodies of the dead released, and this war to end now. President Trump also spoke to Prime Minister Netanyahu after the attack. The Prime Minister told President Trump that he wants to make peace, and quickly. President Trump believes this unfortunate incident could serve as an opportunity for peace. The president also spoke to the Emir and Prime Minister of Qatar and thanked them for their support and friendship to our country. He assured them that such a thing will not happen again on their soil.
But do not for a second think that this was done without the absolute go-ahead from the US. There is no chance in hell Netanyahu and his government would do anything that did not have the absolute approval of America. And there's a lot of people saying that Qatar were also involved. Now, clearly, publicly, they're not going to admit that. A lot more will come out, definitely. But this was a line in the sand moment. This changes the entire thing. Qatar have continuously pretended to be some kind of decent operator in this space, a peace negotiator, someone who's trying to help everyone. No, they are the funders of the terrorism that erupted on October 7, terrorism that has killed thousands all over the world. They are guilty as sin. Now, yes, they have a role to play, but if they wanted the hostages out, they could have had them out on October 8. So Qatar are not this innocent kind of, loving body that's just trying to help. You might think that if you're looking at the reaction from, say, French President Emmanuel Macron, who has condemned this, condemned the attempted assassination of Hamas terrorists. I mean, God forbid. Starmer, Carney in Canada. I mean, you only need to look at different investments in those countries from Qatar to understand where their loyalties lie. And it's certainly not with the good, decent, free, democratic world. I can give you the nod. I'm seeing people saying, oh, but they were right in the midst of a peace negotiation. The BBC attempted to tell us that in a headline. It's believed that the leadership of Hamas at the time were meeting to find peace. Oh, come on. Pull the other one. It's coming up to 2 years. And you reckon right as Israel decides to strike, that's when they were on the brink of a peace deal. Damn you, Israel. Damn you. You are evil. I mean, again, even useful idiots would have to assume and accept that that is ridiculous and way too far-fetched. They are terrorists. But let's now talk to a couple of people who understand this space almost better than anyone. And stay listening because we will update you on this channel as new information comes to hand because the situation is absolutely evolving all the time. Daniel Rubenstein, thank you so much for joining me here on the Erin Molan Show. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for everything you've been doing.
Oh, bless you. Right back at you. It's sometimes thankless work, but very important work all the same. Massive escalation here. Qatar. On Qatari soil, Israel has struck. What do you know so far about what this has achieved? I'm seeing reports out of Turkey that say they gave warning and everyone was moved out. I'm seeing photos of terrorists who were allegedly killed, who were not killed in hospital doing this symbol. I'm seeing other reports saying they were all wiped out. What do we know so far, and can we take any of that, with any element of credibility, or do we just have to wait?
I think so far we know very little and we just have to wait. This is very common with an event of this magnitude, is that all of the parties in the region are going to be quietly and anonymously briefing journalists, sometimes in their country, sometimes in other country. Those reports will be published unsourced. No one knows where they're coming from, what their agenda is. I think what Israel is really doing right now is trying to take stock of what was achieved. This is an intelligence effort in order to be able to determine what happened with the strike. It means looking around on the ground, listening, talking to people, finding out who was present, getting confirmation. You want to be very careful before you come out and make an announcement. I have seen tweets and other statements that Hamas and Al Jazeera have said that this person has survived and this person didn't. I'm just going to wait. What we know for sure is that Israel has claimed responsibility for the attack. The Israeli Air Force flew over Qatar, dropped a bomb, at least one, on a safe house where Hamas leaders were staying. It remains to be seen what was achieved.
I love some of the reports. Initially, the BBC, very quick to say they were talking about peace. They were in the midst of because of course they haven't wanted it in 2 years, but right at this moment that Israel strikes, that's when they were on the brink of peace. I mean, come on.
It's completely delusional. I agree with you. I refer back again to what we saw on October the 7th, 2023, when the Hamas leaders were all there celebrating. They could have at any moment from October 7th, 2023, October 8th, October 9th, October 10th, they could have placed a phone call saying that whichever terrorists took the Bibas children and their mother, they should release them. They did not do that. This did not happen. They are guilty of war crimes and crimes against humanity. They have enjoyed far too much protection for far too long. And it's time that Israel and the whole world send a message to Qatar and to Hamas that you're not safe. It is time to order the release of all the hostages and surrender.
Caroline Leavitt, the press sec, has come out and, a very, very carefully crafted statement, condemning the fact it was on Qatari soil. And look, this is a delicate dance that we understand from a diplomatic perspective, but there is no way in hell this occurred without Donald Trump's permission. No way in hell. Would you agree with that, or am I wrong?
I would be very surprised if the Israeli Air Force flew all the way to Qatar without the knowledge and awareness of the United States military and their commander-in-chief, Donald Trump. As you are aware, the United States has a massive military base in Qatar. I would think that whoever is responsible for the security of such a base might become a little bit suspicious if he or she sees a large number of fighter jets unannounced coming toward them. So I would imagine that there was some type of coordination between Israel and the United States. Maybe Israel received a green light, maybe a yellow light, maybe no answer, but it was simply understood that Israel is going to be doing this because justice must be served for the leaders of the Hamas terrorist organization who are continuing to hold hostages right now as we speak underground, torturing and starving them. They refuse to release them. It's time that they face more pressure.
Qatar have said that they reserve the right to strike back, but I can't imagine. It's all speculation at this stage, but talk coming out of fairly good sources or people who have fairly good sources that they were, of course, aware of this to some degree in that their hands were forced essentially by the US. But of course, everyone publicly has to condemn and hate it.
If I were to take a page out of the Qatari playbook at this very moment, I would simply call on Qatar to de-escalate. There's no need for further escalation.
Finally, reaction from, my favourite European leader, Emmanuel Macron, who has condemned this in such a scathing way. God forbid that we should try and rid the world of terrorists. But he himself did the same thing in another country in 2021, ordered the strike at a wedding of terrorists and justified it by saying they were terrorists. So, he is the most hypocritical, weak-bellied leader I've ever experienced. Justin Trudeau was close, but he really might take the cake now.
It shows you just how weak and irrelevant Emmanuel Macron is that this is the first I'm hearing about his statement, and I've been paying attention to the news all day. It's just simply not relevant what he thinks at this moment. We're in a very tense situation.
From his ex account. So you're right. No one's reported on it because no one cares.
I wish him the best.
Bless. Thank you so very much, Daniel Rubenstein. Thank you for getting us up to date, and hopefully we'll check back in with you at some later stage.
Thank you so much for having me. I hope to do it again.
Great.
Jonathan Conricus, thank you very, very much for your time. Very busy, I'd assume, given what's just occurred.
Yes, finally, after almost 2 years of fighting, and yesterday was a rough day in Israel. We buried 10 Israelis, 6 civilians, and 4 soldiers. So, common national day of mourning. And then things turned quickly in the Middle East, and now we're discussing Israel delivering justice to the masterminds and the supporters of Hamas, far, far away from Israeli borders. That's a good thing. So things turn and they shift, very busy. And I think we should anticipate a lot of interesting events in the following days.
Yeah, absolutely. For those who don't follow this as closely as I do, and even more so as you do, can you explain Qatar, who act as, these really decent peace-wanting mediators who are there to help and just want the hostages released, blah, 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 blah. They are arsonists and trying to pretend to be firefighter in this scenario. Obviously, the US needs a relationship with them. I get all the diplomatic side of it. But if they wanted the hostages released, if they wanted Hamas out of Qatar, they would be out of there.
Definitely. Listen, for people who don't know, who haven't been, following world events, FIFA World Cups and major cultural events, etc., Qatar is a very small country with out of this world astronomical wealth, one of the richest countries per capita in the world. And what they've done since they were given independence, or when they became independent in the early 1970s, was to use their wealth in such a way that they would defend themselves and hedge themselves against bigger and more powerful countries. And when you think about Qatar, think soft power. Think buying influence and buying it at a high price, but really buying your way into influencing people, institutions, media, politicians. Everything is up for sale, and the Qataris, I think, credit to them for buying people and institutions and doing it very smartly, and by doing so, protecting themselves and achieving and building this brand that you alluded to of a small, savvy country that really is an honest broker and a mediator here in these challenging times in the Middle East. That is not what Qatar is about. Qatar is a state sponsor of terrorism. They've been housing Hamas terrorists for at least since 2012, when Hamas were kicked out of Syria. The place that they found and built a new home for themselves was in Qatar. And the Qatari leadership, the royal family, all of the bureaucracy has been hosting and supporting financially, politically, the Hamas leadership in Gaza. And, for me as an Israeli, when I think Hamas in Gaza, I think of a clip from October 7, where all of the senior leadership of Hamas that's outside of Gaza, they were in Qatar, and they were beyond themselves with joy over the attack that Hamas was able to launch against Israel on October the 7th. And they were in Qatar, and they did a praying ceremony together.
Allah.
Yes, and they praised Allah and they praised their good fortune for being able to kill 1,300 Israelis in one day, 900 of them civilian, for raping and beheading and butchering and taking hostages and starting the war that we're now 704 days into. For me, this is closing that circle, and we still don't have confirmation that all of the terrorists were indeed eliminated. There's conflicting BDA here, so we'll have to wait. But for me, I hope that we will see closure, and that these terrorists who were part of the masterminds and the planners of the worst day in modern history for Israel, that they finally receive justice and they're finally not going to continue to terrorize Israelis anymore. So Qatar, smart country, savvy, very influential. Everywhere you look, media institutions, Sky News, Tucker Carlson, lots of people that have lots of influence, but they also are paid by Qatar, and that's why Qatar is in such good graces and good favors, and many people don't know what really Qatar is about.
Now, Israel has come out, and you're right, we don't know details yet regarding the success of this operation. Nothing official is coming out, and there are, of course, a million differing reports. Israel, though, has come out and claimed responsibility in its entirety. Donald Trump has put out a statement distancing himself very much, kind of condemning it in a way, but also saying any eradication of terrorists is a good thing. There's no way in hell, and you know how the Israeli government operates far better than I do, there's no way in hell this would have been conducted without some form of approval from Trump, is there? It just wouldn't happen.
No. I mean, let's break this down. Qatar is home to one of the largest air bases in the world, if not the largest, the Al Udeid Air Base, which is a U.S. air base with lots of very important and expensive assets that are defended with air defense systems that are top-notch, some of the best in the world, American systems. The Qataris, of course, want the U.S. airbase to be there because it also protects Qatari airspace. Now, I think that there is zero feasibility that Israel would conduct a military strike using 10 or 15 fighter jets to drop ordnance, to drop bombs into Qatari airspace without having not only informing the Americans, but having American approval before that to make sure that American assets were not going to be inadvertently damaged and that there would be no confusion and mistakes being made. So, in my mind, there's no doubt that the U.S. had advanced knowledge of this. I don't know how long ahead of the strike the U.S. told the Qataris. That's an interesting point, because if they told them, and I think they told them ahead of time, of course, the Qataris could have warned Hamas. Now, I'll get a little bit conspirative, but
Please.
I think it's an interesting thing here, because I believe that U.S. knew about this. President Trump approved it. I believe that the American defense establishment knew about it long ahead of time. And I also believe that the U.S. informed the Qataris ahead of time that it was happening. There is a possibility that the Qataris willingly sacrificed Hamas here because Hamas had outstayed their welcome. Because there are a lot of things that don't really add up here in terms of this happening without the Qataris doing anything about it. And at this stage, there's a lot of questions that we still don't have good, plausible answers for. But I struggled to see a situation where this was a surprise by Israel and whereby the Americans, who have long-term interest with the Qataris, would just leave them in the dark and not inform them of information that they had, which they knew was valuable to the Qataris, and which they knew that after the fact the Qataris would know that the Americans knew before. And thereby, if they wouldn't disclose the information, that would put them in a bad light. So we don't know. What I can say for certain is that the terrorists in Doha were there for far too long, and they enjoyed great hospitality and services from the Qatari government and the royal family. I think that they were probably obstructing a deal and to end the war in Gaza. According to reports I have from Israeli sources, the Hamas leadership outside of Gaza wasn't helping, wasn't telling the Hamas leadership in Gaza that they have to take a deal, return the hostages, dismantle and lay down their weapons and end the suffering. That is not what they were telling Gaza, and maybe that's one of the reasons why the Qataris said, okay, if these guys aren't going to play ball, then maybe it's time to cut them loose, and maybe they've become more than a liability than an asset from a Qatari perspective.
I think you are absolutely spot on. I think that's far more reality than it is conspiracy theory, but we will soon see. You also throw into that Trump did his final warning post 24 hours or so ago, and I made the point yesterday on the show that, he's given these kind of things before. This one could not have passed by without action, or he loses credibility. Israel said very recently that it doesn't matter where you are around the world, we will find you. You're not safe. And I love the thought of any terrorist in any part of the world. I don't care if they're in a sovereign nation, not feeling safe. They're terrorists. They have no right to feel safe.
True, they don't. And I think this is, so far, what I can say the most important outcome of this Israeli unprecedented strike is that terrorists, wherever they are, if they hurt Israelis, if they aspire to kill Israelis, then they have a target on their forehead, and eventually Israel will get to them. And I think that's exactly what every freedom-loving democracy and country should aspire to do, to deter terrorists and to make it costly for terrorists to attack, and for anybody that harbors them, there should be consequences as well. And let's be frank here. I mean, Israel didn't strike any Qatari targets. They just struck Hamas in Qatar. Some people would say that, it's not enough that we struck Hamas personnel in Qatar, but that there should be a price to pay by the Qataris for hosting and providing and sustaining them. That hasn't happened. And maybe that was contemplated by Israel, and Israel decided, well, let's not push the envelope. But I think that there's room to, maybe this is a first warning, President Trump telling the Qataris that you're a bit out of line. You may think that you own me, President Trump, but I'm the boss of the world and of the region. And if you think that you're going to get away with stalling negotiations and not applying pressure on Hamas and not finishing a war that I want finished, this is President Trump, then there's a price to pay. And this is a price. So I think this opens up a lot of opportunities for the future, hopefully sends a good, strong message to terrorists and wannabe terrorists and their supporters. And I think many countries should, instead of criticizing Israel, they should follow Israel's lead and speak the language that terrorists understand. Terrorists don't understand the language of human rights, international law, and civil behavior. They understand credibility, they understand the use of force and sincerity when it comes to having no daylight between what you say you're going to do and what you're actually doing. And as you said, President Trump has been super clear. Now the time is up. Now there are consequences. On the 60th day of negotiations with the Iranians, he tweeted, and on the 61st day, stuff happened. And that's exactly the type of leadership that I think is needed.
Brilliant. Jonathan Conricus, thank you so much for your time. Okay. So make sure you stay tuned to the Erin Molan Show, and we'll bring you all the latest. And I guess, look, I'm nothing if not a very decent, empathetic person, and I just want to end today's episode, this special episode on Israel's strikes in Qatar, with some words of comfort for those who will be finding this incredibly difficult. I want to pay my respects and send lots of love to Tucker Carlson. This would be a really, really difficult time for him. Dave Smith would be, gosh, in all sorts. Candace Owens, no doubt, would be setting up in Struggle Town. This would be really difficult for her as well. Emmanuel Macron, Starmer, Carney. I mean, they would be devastated. Devastated. Not just at the potential loss of terrorism and the life of those with whom they seem to really find so much common ground, but Qatar, ka-ching, Qatar, ka-ching. I'm not saying that there's any money that's ever changed hands. I would never say that, nor would I imply that massive investments in those countries from Qatar has anything to do with the weak, yellow-bellied appeasement of terrorists that these leaders have shown time and time and time again. I would never, ka-ching, ever, ka-ching, ever, ka-ching, imply that their sadness today would have anything to do with ka-ching, but just wanted to send my love, because if people like Tucker can share his condolences and sadness at the loss of Osama bin Laden with his family, then the least I can do is send my love to all those who love terrorism, who would just feel sick at the thought that they're not even safe in Qatar. Ka-ching. Not even safe in Qatar. Ka-ching. Not even safe in Qatar. Ka-ching. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next week. Have a great weekend. But stay watching though, because I will update you when big things come to hand, even if it's not time for an actual episode. You know where to stay tuned. Ka-ching. No Qatar money here, quite obviously. Oh, and none from Israel either, FYI. Love you guys. Bye.